Hello and greetings and welcome to our series of weekly devotionals. We're at the midweek point of our devotionals this week as we take a look at Psalm 65. And today I just wanted to reflect and remember a time in my youth. I grew up, of course, in the Catholic Church, and I think I grew up with the notion, the idea that by the force of my own will, by the choices I made, I could somehow become sacred and holy. That if I went to Mass enough, if I prayed the Rosary enough, went to confession, did enough good works out in the world, received communion and the other sacraments, and essentially did what the priest told me to do, that we could be made holy and sacred. That indeed the life of faith was up to us. It was what we made of it, and our experience of God was pretty much due to however much we would put into it. And of course, I've sort of changed my tune since that time. Last week, I remarked about a wonderful book that I read by the Lutheran pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber. It's called Accidental Saints. And I remember a chapter out of that book. She talks about a guy who had joined her church. She put together this church, the House for All Saints and Sinners in Denver, Colorado, and she said it was wonderful. The people that came there, it was just a wonderful collection of sort of misfits, and she loved them all. They were all different, but she loved them all, and she connected with so many of them on a close and personal and intimate level. But this one guy ended up joining the church, and he just rubbed her the wrong way. And she just really couldn't stand to be around him. She found him to be rude and just obnoxious and just annoying. And he always kind of wanted to be in her personal space and just glom all of her time and take away her time from others. And she just couldn't stand him, really. And she confesses, I know as a pastor I was supposed to be there for him, but I purposely left him off of mass email mailing lists so that he wouldn't know the church was going on a retreat for a particular weekend, because she didn't want him to go. And she just tried the best she could to just sort of avoid him. He found a woman, fell in love, and wanted the pastor to marry him and his wife, and Pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber found a convenient excuse to get out of it. She just, didn't want to be around him at all. Then he fell ill and passed away, and she felt very, very guilty about the way that she had treated him, and she went and of course officiated at his funeral service, and his wife came up to her and said, I just wanted to tell you how this church, how your presence in his life transformed him. He spoke about how wonderful it was to be a part of this church and how wonderful it was to have you as a pastor. And Nadia Bolz-Weber just reflected that I was a total jerk to this guy, but somehow God chose to use me. God chose to work through this relationship. God chose to transform this man despite me, and despite my best efforts to do the exact opposite. And what that story suggests is that holiness and sacredness isn't really up to us. It's up to God. And so the psalmist confirms when he or she writes, our faults defeat us, but you forgive them. Happy are those whom you choose. God's working in our lives is never our choice, but always God's choice. And we would do well to remember that. Let us pray. Holy God, we know that we can strive to do good. We can strive to pray and worship and do all the things that we feel you call us to do. But in the end, we know that our relationship with you is pure gift, and that your presence in our lives is pure grace. And you choose to work in us, with us, through us, to whomever, in whatever way you choose. And help us to understand that, to let go of a little bit of control and the notion that somehow by the force of our own will we can somehow make our lives sacred. Help us to simply open our hearts to your always sacred presence in our lives. Amen.